Hello, everyone. Timothy Wenger here from The Man Effect. Really excited today to talk about father figures, secondary father figures, mentors. And I am really happy because I have invited a good friend of mine, Dr. Daniel David, to join me in
Please
this
call me
discussion.
Daniel.
Oh, Daniel.
Okay. It's okay.
And if you haven't seen a previous interview with him, he's done a lot of work with men. Is it a therapist or counselor?
Therapist.
Therapist. And
Yes.
you've worked with gang members in the past. You have a very rich background. And when we initially met, we just really jived well. And I was so excited to talk about this with you. And after weeks and weeks of putting it off, we're here. We're finally about to do it.
Yes. Yes.
So,
you've been on your journey and I'm on mine.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So what was the original thing that sparked this conversation? I think it was I was listening to a podcast with Joe Rogan and the guy who wrote Fight Club.
That's right.
His name. And in there, they were talking about how important it is for men to have a secondary father figure in their life. Mm-hmm. And I reached out to you instantly. I was like, oh man, we got to talk about this because this is something that it's just mentors are just a huge role in men's lives. Right. So why don't we jump in? You have a figurine. I think jump right into that.
It's my Merlin. It's a brass statue. When you talked about this topic, I don't know if the camera can see it, but
yeah, that was good.
You know, I love archetypes, and if guys are interested, they can read the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, and that's by Gillette and Moore. And it's from a Carl Jungian-based depth psychology perspective. And so the archetype of the wizard or the magician, as in magi, is something that we can look at as far as, far back as the Arthurian legends and even further back, when we're talking about the early Greek philosophers, there are lots of relationships, even biblical figures had their relationships with younger men, and it was a type of mentoring relationship. So King Arthur had Merlin, and this is my statue of Merlin. But it's interesting because it takes us back to, we're talking about thousands of years. Mm-hmm. And when you gave me this topic, or you said, hey, what do you think about secondary father figures? And I had automatically thought about mentoring, because that's what it is. Mm-hmm. I think that it's something that's very innate inside of us, something that's deep. It's a deep psychological need, maybe a spiritual need for some people, to have this sort of relationship with men who have gone further down the road than we have. Mm-hmm. And, they've gone through the trials and tribulations of the hero's journey. And they probably have been around that hero's journey several times, and they're able to sit with the mentee, the young man who wants to maybe follow in that path. It could be a career, it could be a sense of development, personal initiation, all these very deeply emotional and psychological issues, and we need mentors. We just don't see it a lot in our society anymore. And it's kind of disheartening on some level.
Yeah. I think a lot of guys, they might not necessarily say that they want a mentor, but there's this innate craving for an older male figure to be in your life, to affirm you. And sometimes I find that people are repulsed by their initial father figure, their dad, but they find someone else to latch onto, whether it's, I don't know, James Bond, or whatever, there's all these different sources that people find a father figure in. And so it's interesting to me, but the more mystical, the more archetypal, I always like that too. I'm not as strong in it as you are, knowledge wise, but Marlin, I love the figure, and I love the idea of it all. It's old. It makes me think of was it Socrates, Plato, or is it?
That's what I was thinking about. It was either
Or is
It
it
was
Plato and
probably
Socrates?
now I'm confused. But
I
I
can't
was thinking
remember.
of that relationship back as
Yeah,
far back as, the Greeks and the philosophers, right?
yeah.
So it's really, I believe instinctual on some level that we need to seek out this secondary father figure. So
Yeah, I
I
think
really like the topic.
something that I was wanting to touch base on was the involuntary secondary father figure. So for me, I have a background as an electrician, and
Hmm.
that's an apprenticeship realm, right? And
Right.
so even though my master electrician wasn't someone that I looked to as a father figure, he played that type of role in my profession, right? So he's saying, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. This is how you're supposed to do it. This is what you're supposed to do. And there's this shaping and this molding that goes on of exposing my weaknesses and my lack and saying, you
Hmm.
have what it takes, but this is what you're doing wrong. And so even though it's not someone that I would naturally go to for, I don't know, life wisdom, let's say, but professionally, I was forced into that relationship. And I find that occurs a lot for men too. What do you think about that?
Well, that's a very interesting relationship there, because when you think about it, Michael Meade and Robert Bly, they talk a lot about initiation, male initiation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was Michael Meade who said that he didn't think that fathers could uh, appropriately initiate their sons into manhood. Because,
Hmm.
and I really thought about this. So we all enter some sort of trance,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a, family dynamic, a socioeconomic class, a
Mm-hmm.
certain local belief system. We are all in a trance,
Yeah.
and when we meet up with, and so our fathers are also in that trance. And we can talk about the father wound later on, but if our
Mm-hmm.
fathers are trying to initiate us, they're going to come at it with the same sort of perspective that maybe everybody in the neighborhood has. And
Mm-hmm.
for young men to get out of that trance, they need someone that is going to have a different, maybe a different perspective, maybe a different trance, but getting us out of that is really important. So when you have a mentor like that, who is basically, involuntary and set up so that you have to achieve a certain level of skills and abilities, they're going to come at it with a less emotional investment. They're going to come at it with the technical side, and also, hey, you need to get through this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're going to push you a little harder than your dad would push you.
Mm-hmm.
I know that dads can, when we talk about, the father wound, they can kind of push us too hard
Yep.
because they're trying to make up for their past and,
Yep.
in their son's lives, right? So,
Yeah.
and that's another reason why maybe this secondary father isn't really important, is because the secondary father doesn't come at it with the same emotional investment. And that way they're clear-headed and able to, say, hey, well, you need to do this, this, and this, and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of push a person, in the right direction, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Usually, like when I get into the conversation of mentors and father figures and stuff, I like to uh, picture it like a pie chart. I wonder if we can do a.
Oh, that's cool.
Let me see here. Sometimes there's an option. It's gone now. Anyway, so I look at like the need for a father role in a man's life like a pie chart, right?
Hmm.
And generally, how someone who's not articulately or like intuitively, I mean, not intuitively, but like intentionally thinking about their need for a father role, they're
Hmm.
not realizing that they're expecting their biological father to be a part of, fulfill that 100% of that pie chart of your need, right? When in
Right.
reality, our biological fathers might be a fraction, fulfill a
Right.
fraction of that need, right? And so then that portrays the question of where are you going to fulfill your need for a father figure if my biological father is only going to fulfill, let's say, 5, 10, 20%.
Hmm.
And so if you approach it with that expectation, you're not going to be mad at your dad for not teaching you how to change a tire or how to get a girlfriend or how to get a job. You're going to realize that he's only fulfilling one part of this chart, right? And so
Right.
then you're like, well, how do I fulfill the rest of this chart? Is it through books? Is it through someone in the community? Is it my uncle? Is it my older brother? Is it X, Y, and Z? And there's so many different ways that you can fill in the rest of this pie chart that doesn't have to be your biological father. And when I approached the subject in that reality, not only did it make me feel free, but it also made me connect better with my own father because my expectations shifted.
Right.
If that makes sense. And then
Oh yeah.
it also shifted how I interact with people who come and go as that secondary figure or a third figure in my life, And so maybe like someone I worked with in the past played a really dominant role of like correcting me, and now they're gone. And so now it's, I don't know, a book I'm reading is like just slapping me in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was something that I formulated based off of, for me, a personal desire. I had a really strong desire when I was in my teens for a mentor. I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted someone to tell me what to do and how to do it. And no one ever did. And it was really, it was me and books and podcasts. That's that was it. But I was not okay with that. I felt I was insufficient because I didn't have a mentor in my life. And looking back now, I fulfilled that role in my life through books and podcasts and other things. And so I don't know. It's just an interesting. That's how I've
Well, I
approached it.
like that. I mean, because first of all, you're right. I think that for us to expect our fathers to fulfill all of our needs is unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I remember my dad telling me I had to fix the car, but that was back in the day when the car could be fixed. You know what I mean? Like you could actually get under a
Yeah.
car and change a starter, or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
nowadays they're computers and you need a computer science degree to do it. So you can't really ask them to, fix the car anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
there are these basic skills. I was listening to a speaker the other day, and he was talking about the role of fathers. And, basically the role of a father is to make their children competent in the world, to be able to go out in the world with some level of skills to be able to live life, survive and overcome. Right. And navigate through all the obstacles. So there is a role there for fathers, and it is important for fathers to take time and invest in their kids, male and female, to really help them to, when they leave the home and they, go out into the world, that, they can do that with confidence and competence. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
I seriously, encourage fathers. I'm always happy to have fathers when I'm in therapy, because I always tell them that the work that they're doing on themselves is going to not only impact, positively impact their lives, but also impact their children and maybe even the next generation after that. So it's
Yeah.
so important to have, men really working on themselves and working deeply on the issues that are inside. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to your point, I think that we need to go beyond, again, where our fathers are probably in the same sort of perspective we are. I call it the trance, and we need to break that trance and get out of it. It's
Yeah.
like I was talking to a guy the other day about wealth management, and I'm a therapist, but I'm really, I've had a long history in, I started out in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
started with Bear Stearns. I thought I was going to go into being a stockbroker, and then I left
Mm-hmm.
and decided I wanted to be out in the streets. So I did a lot of work in the communities and work with the mayor's office and all these things in New York. And and so this guy is talking about like money and not having enough money. And I said, well, money's a psychology, and you could sense that all of a sudden the magic starts happening in the relationship, because I'm kind of giving this secret knowledge to this person. And that's what mentoring is about. It's about secret knowledge. I call it secret knowledge because, like, Merlin had this secret knowledge. He understood, and this is where the mentor has to stand between two worlds, their own world and the world of the mentee, and trying to
Mm-hmm.
understand what are they trying to give to this person who is actually learning from them. So there's a huge responsibility there, for the
Yeah.
mentor to actually give this information. And it's, what I call the secret knowledge.
Yeah.
So our fathers can't do it all. And I think, to your point again, it's a relief for many fathers to realize, oh, I can't, I'm not going to give them everything, my kids everything. And maybe it's important to, set them up with other men or even women who can be mentors.
Yeah.
You know, um, and so that's where I see it. It has a lot of value and a lot of purpose.
Hmm. I think it's good to like address though, and specifically think about your need, right? As a human, like why do you expect one person to fulfill this role? And is it something that you're willing to even think about? Or is it like, this is just how it is in my brain, right? Like, I only have one father figure. That's just how it is, blah, blah, blah. Like, I've met some people like that. And I've also met some people who are like, they don't have a father and they're just always craving for some sort of role in their life. And so, but not realizing that need, I think, is a disservice to men. And
Right.
so realizing like it's okay to want a man who's older than you or not older than you to speak into your life. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to look for wisdom and knowledge from other people. It's just, how are you going about that, and what are your expectations? And I think that's really powerful. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, people get stuck. I think that guys who come to see me, they get stuck on the father wound. So they've been hurt. Okay.
Yeah.
And when we get hurt, it's like a real wound. It takes a lot of energy to sustain that wound, to try to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do? We kind of fixate on all of our hurts. So my dad hurt me, or this man hurt me. And then we become leery of men, and we, want to avoid men.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many guys I've talked to who don't have male friendships, and they don't have older male friendships. They don't have peer friendships. They don't have younger male friendships. And those are the three levels that I tell guys: you need to have someone older in your life. You need to have someone your age, and you need to have someone younger. These are really valuable things. But when we get fixated on the wound and we think, well, my dad hurt me.
Yeah.
Then of course, we have this resentment and anger and bitterness inside of us. Then it kind of shuts us down from receiving from other men, the care and the wisdom that we need, to get through life. We need to depend on others. It's not that, so many people are so worried about codependency, but there is a interdependency that we need. And having another man speak into our lives is really valuable.
Absolutely.
So, I believe that it's a way that a lot of men can get out of this father hunger and
father hunger,
heal the wounded, the father wound that was caused. So it's another form of healing that I think is very valuable.
Yeah. Not only healing, but it's like it's a what do they call that? Like a launching pad or something. It's
right.
like when you realize your ability to pull from other people's skills and capabilities, it allows you to maintain focus on your strengths, but also pull from other people's strengths when you need them, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's like when you are able to digest the fact that you're not perfect and that you need help in some areas of life, and you figure out how to ask for help, when you're able to tap into other, let's just say businessmen or marriage counseling, I don't know, like whatever it is, it will help you hasten the process and launch you in it. And I'll come back to being an electrician. Like I could stumble through for 5 years trying to figure out how to become an electrician, but having someone who's been there longer than me and has industry knowledge and experience, they will hasten my process exponentially just by being around me and walking me through mentalities and how to troubleshoot and how electricity works and blah, blah, blah. And so it's not that I couldn't do it on my own. Sure, I could have, but them being there exponentially increases my growth to a point that I couldn't even quantify.
Right. You're saving time by having someone mentor you because they've gone through that already. They already know. They're, like I said, they're further down the road. So you're right about that. It's so important. I think there's some research. I did a little research of my own, like, I think up to 80% of CEOs who have been surveyed say that they've had, successful CEOs have had mentors in their history,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then startups, having mentors, they say that up to about 70% of successful startups usually have, the 5-year mark, when they reach the 5-year mark, have had,
Mm-hmm.
mentors that were involved in, helping the individual starting the startup, to keep it on track and not, sink
Yeah.
the ship per se,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
so yeah, you're right. Why not save yourself a lot of headache? We all go through the school of hard knocks,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I would rather, and I've had mentors in my life, and I've asked them, hey, can you help me with this, or can you
Mm-hmm.
give me some guidance here? Why wouldn't we want that, and why wouldn't we want to receive that? And I think that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of guys don't know that they really should ask, right? But
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
save yourself a lot of time.
Yeah. I think something else important too is to highlight that someone can be a mentor when it's not declared a mentee mentor relationship. so
Right.
so it's not like, will you be my mentor? Okay, I'm
Mhm.
your mentee. Please give me all your wisdom. That's not really generally how it works. It might work like that in some people's lives, but it's generally like it could be. I mean, I think of when I was starting my business, like I was freaking out about some certain insurance hurdles I was facing,
Mm.
and I called up a friend who's been self-employed for years, and he's just like, "Chill the fuck out. Like, there's a simple solution. Just call this." And I was like, "Oh my god." Yeah, it was so
Right.
easy, but I
Right.
was so stressed out, and it's not like I think of that as a mentor-mentee relationship, but in that moment, he was mentoring me.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's all accidental for the most part. You don't even realize you're mentoring someone, and when they ask you a question, you answer it. It's like, okay, transfer of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So he just kind of downloaded that into you, and now you have that knowledge, and you can pass that knowledge on to someone else, right?
Exactly. I think the reason why, for me, oh, little sound there. Since because of my Christian background, there was some sort of pedestal put on the mentor-mentee relationship that somehow made it more unhuman in some way. Like it was some sort of untangible relationship. And so for me, I've always tried to demystify that type of interaction in life. So I have some sort of agenda there for some reason, but it's just like it could be so simple as just talking to some stranger and they could give you a bit of advice, and that could be that type of role for you in that moment. And so anyway.
Well, I like your, um, I like to mystify things a little bit, because okay, I'm going to go the opposite direction for a second, because I think there's something, almost magical in the sense of, you know, the unseen versus the seen in
Mm,
a relationship that, maybe often happens very naturally. A young person will seek out some sort of, uh, comfort or
mm,
information, or
mhm.
just wanting to be reassured, or maybe have some validation to be
Yeah.
affirmed, and then suddenly that connection happens, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's why I think the archetype of the magician being the mentor. Now I know that there are other archetypes, and there are many others, but this book,
Yeah.
really emphasizes the king, the warrior, magician, and lover, and every one of those mature male archetypes have the ability to mentor, um, younger individuals who are seeking, right? But there is a
Yeah.
magic there that can happen, a beautiful relationship that can happen. I've had some wonderful mentors in my life. All the way back when I was, I had a man who taught me how to set up a nonprofit organization.
Mm,
I worked for him for a while to write grants. He taught me how to write grants, and then he said, go out and start your own.
mm,
And you've already raised nearly $1 million in grant money.
mhm.
Go out and write your own grants, and set up your own organization. And that was a beautiful relationship. And I had a dean who was, loved me academically, and he was my philosophy professor. So speaking of Socrates and Plato, I should
Mm.
know better, right? Right. But he was the one. I know, don't, I hope he doesn't see this video, I'll get in trouble. But so he was the one who mentored me to go on to higher education and things like that. So
Mm.
it's a magical relationship. And, so the Magi sort of walks between two worlds.
Mm-hmm.
The wizard, if you want to, really means the wise one.
Mm-hmm.
So the seen versus the unseen world, the known versus the unknown world, the day versus the night.
Mm-hmm.
In therapy, I see therapy a lot as a mentoring process or a process of initiation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's dealing with the unconscious mind versus the conscious mind, and all of our desires, our wants, our impulses, all those things that we don't typically pay attention to. Someone can actually then sit with us and say, well, have you thought about this, or have you thought about that, or maybe this is why you're doing this, and it opens up our eyes to see, oh yeah, right, I'm doing this because maybe I got hurt, or maybe I was abandoned as a child, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That itself is a very magical kind of experience in the sense of relationship. There's something that clicks.
Yeah. 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 That's what, so it's like kind of like a balancing act of like, don't make it an unrealistic expectation to the point where nothing's ever going to fulfill it, but also appreciate it for what it truly is too, and what it could develop into.
Right. I mean, there's hard work when
Mm-hmm.
you're a mentee, like with the guy who taught me how to build an organization. I mean, he had me working. I had to do all that
Yeah.
work. And so,
Yeah. Exactly.
I think you to your point about electricians, they got to go out and, they got to
Dude.
wire the house, and not have it blow up and burn down. Right.
Yeah.
Or the
Oh
plumbing,
yeah.
the plumbers, that, you don't want your plumbing to back up too. Right. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's some real work there, some valuable work.
Yeah. I think what's interesting too about that though is like not everyone, let me rephrase that. There's a common mistake of focusing on the outcome of like where you're going and belittling the process. And like when in reality, for me, the grinding of getting into attics when it was 100 degrees outside and 120 or 30 in the attic, or crawling in crawl spaces, or just, working long days. Like, even though the mundaneness of those weeks and months and years were not always appreciated, when I reflect on them now, what they taught me, I highly value.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really important to not try to always think about where you're gonna be. Like, just enjoy the moment and know that even if it's not exactly where you want to be, it's going to take you somewhere. And so even though you might not have the ideal mentor in your life that you want right now, like, oh, I want this billionaire Mark Cuban to be my mentor.
Right.
Like, you might have someone that you actually need in your life right now to get you to that next step. And so, I don't know, there's that weird appreciation level that I've personally developed more and more over the last 2 years, that like a lot of the grinding that I've done, and I haven't done a lot, like I'm not that old, like it's just really, really been foundational to taking me to new places internally.
Well, I like the whole step thing, because life isn't lived in a straight line. We all have, I never even planned to be a therapist. Quite frankly, I didn't know. I never thought about being a therapist. While I was doing all that work, I was doing what was right in front of me, the next step, and taking the next step, and then I'm here now, and but it was never a straight line, and it was not intentional. It just happened, and in many ways, I'm really blessed and happy about that it happened this way. If I had planned it out, maybe I wouldn't have experienced so many good things and so many wonderful experiences, because I would have just kind of taken out all those experiences, and made it a straight line. Like, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And, life isn't lived like that.
Well, that was not my life, at least.
Not mine either. And it's okay. It's like, I think guys have to realize, you don't have to have it all together all the time.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. Well, what I would like to do is let's try to touch base on let's do like 2 or 3 practical steps that guys can take if they're looking for some sort of mentor role in their life, like they have a void. So let's try to touch that. So I'll go first. One of the biggest roles that I really liked when I was trying to find mentorship on a knowledge basis was books. I love books, whether it's audiobook or reading. I found a lot of inspiration and mentorship through autobiographies. Like Benjamin Franklin's a great example too, or a biography of him, or just people in spheres that I really respect. Reading about their lives was a huge mentorship for me, and encouragement just in general. So that would be one of my tips. What about you?
Well, I agree with you. I was a big fan of Winston Churchill, and
Yeah.
especially in my earlier days and going out on the streets of New York, I sort of had to think of, this is like we're at war here, and just to really work with people. So books were helpful. But I also ask guys to, and I've done this for myself, think about 3 men in your life that maybe you admire, someone close in proximity, maybe someone that is a public figure, maybe someone of history like you, like Ben Franklin, and just really study that person and see, and look at all sides of their lives. Don't just look at their successes. A lot of guys tell me they admire Elon Musk, and I'm like, okay, but you can clearly see his mistakes and his imperfections. And I think that's all good, so if you can study a person like that, again, it's like, well, one of the benefits of having that sort of mentor is you can avoid the mistakes that they made. Right. So, yeah.
Exactly.
So someone that you admire, and if you're able to talk to that person, that's great. If not, then maybe just study their lives.
Yeah. That's great. I'm trying to think what would be a good third option, like a creative option for guys who feel stuck in finding a mentor role. Would it be maybe volunteering somewhere, or I'm trying to think of just trying to get
you're right.
Leadership,
Right. Why wouldn't you? Volunteering is really important. Again, it's putting ourselves in different situations that we're not accustomed to.
Yeah.
And then finding those leaders who are in those situations who are maybe more skilled at that, for example, Habitat for Humanity is something that a lot of guys around Atlanta get involved in. And I know that Jimmy Carter, former President Jimmy Carter, is highly involved in Habitat for Humanity, and has, even at his late age, last year, I think he was out on one of the projects. I think that he had to go to the hospital from there. But yeah, maybe they're working him too hard, But yeah, volunteering is a great way of meeting a mentor.
Yeah, it's that serving others can be a mentorship. I think that's right. That's what it would be. Yeah. So not only, okay, so those are some practical ways that guys can start to work on that pie chart.
Right. Filling in
some slivers. What would be some other tips or advice that you would give around this specific topic to guys in this arena?
Especially in, because I work with guys in therapy, I'm really a big stickler about men having relationships with other men. I get so many guys who come in and it's all about the woman, that they're, either chasing a woman, they're married to a woman, or trying to divorce a woman. It's, and that's problematic. It's like, and when you ask them, you say, okay, what are your relationships like with your guy friends? And they kind of have this deer in headlights stare, into the, like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, can you tell me about, your guy friends? And they say, well, I don't have any guy friends, or I have just this one friend and he's, 5 states away. And I'm like, okay, well, here's the imbalance in your life. I believe that when we connect with other men, that, and we do this inner work of understanding our own identity as men, and maybe working through the archetypes and understanding that, there are these individual aspects of our personality and who we are that we can work through, we can work on, and we can enhance, and we can grow, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
A mentoring process is a maturing process. It really is about an internal growing up and getting out of boy psychology into male psychology, right? So when I ask guys to have male friends, and like I said before, I ask them to have 3 different levels. The older male that they can kind of look at for inspiration, maybe peers, and then they're someone that they can mentor themselves, because taking on responsibility for someone, mentoring someone can, cause us to be more responsible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's just, I just think that, maybe it starts in our neighborhood, maybe in our church, or maybe in our community, where we can connect with other men, go to men's meetings. Robert Bly has every year the Minnesota Men's Conference.
I didn't know that.
Yes, it's out in Minnesota. So
Really?
yes, and then of course there are other organizations that gather men together, and I think that it's a real important thing to do. I run men's groups, so I see guys actually going through a transformation, a maturing, a growing in the room, in the group. And they start out really rough, and they come in, and other guys are really caring and nurturing towards them and affirming and validating, and you can just see them in a matter of months. They just start to grow, right? So we don't have to be mentored by one person. We can be mentored by a group of men.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's good. I'm trying to think on my end what I would suggest. I mean, we've covered almost everything. I think the biggest thing too is just not expecting things to happen instantly.
Right.
Like really, really addressing what your expectations are. Like if you're expecting Elon Musk or the president to be your mentor, like I'm not saying that can't happen, because there are, I'm sure, a handful of people that are mentored by those individuals. But
right.
It's good to have like a sober expectation as well.
Well, and we have to put out a word of caution, because I don't want to set anyone up for hurt. If you get with a mentor and you find a guy who you maybe admire, but he turns out to be a narcissistic, guy who wants to, put you down,
they're still
run
human.
for the hills. They're still human, right? And it's important to be able to say no, thank you, and this isn't right. I do a lot of this with guys who are in the 12-step program, and sponsoring is a type of mentorship. It's coaching, type of coaching in recovery, right?
Yeah.
But I've had to say to guys, look, your sponsor is not your therapist, they're not your psychiatrist, they're not your doctor. They shouldn't be telling you what medications you're taking, and and all things like that. And when I hear of some pretty bad mentoring that comes from that realm, I say, look, you need to find someone else and fire your sponsor and fire your mentor. I think it's up to us to protect ourselves and to make sure we're not, exposing ourselves, to hurt. So be real about it. And definitely, you're not there to learn everything from this person. You're just learning a specific skill or a specific area of knowledge, right? Wisdom.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
So I think that's important.
I think we should go over some red flags for a bad mentor. I think that would be good.
Okay. Yeah.
So like I would say, exclusivity, like in the sense of like making you feel like you're elite and like not human, like that's not a good sign. So like, what's a good example? Multi-level marketing. That's a good example. So you're in their club, and they're like, this is the place to be. Everyone else is stupid. Like when you're with someone who puts everyone else down to make you come up, then that's an exclusivity. That's an elitism. Like that's a red flag.
Absolutely.
So that would be one I would go with.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. That one is a big one. And I also think that when the mentor takes over, is trying to take over too much, of the mentee's life. I think that's a danger and a red flag. If you're being mentored to, like in the trades, if you're being mentored as a plumber apprentice, then you only expect to get plumbing, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And if the other, and if he's trying to mentor you around, medication, I mean, he's totally out of his league, right?
Yep.
It's a different area, right?
Yes.
You wouldn't want your doctor mentoring you about plumbing.
Yes.
And so it's important to make sure that they stay within their boundaries and
Yes.
respect your ideas and your thoughts as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not only realizing what your relationship with them is and what you're trying to learn from them, but also knowing that when they do or start crossing line, to have that boundary, which can be really hard with someone that you look up to.
Right.
Because you're just like, oh, you want to accept everything they're saying. But the reality is they are human, and there will probably be boundaries that are crossed.
And remember that I think another good point is that mentoring relationships usually don't last forever. Mm-hmm. There is a period of time, in the hero's journey, when the young man goes out into the unknown world, he finds a mentor, and then the mentor takes him through. It was, kind of like the classic Yoda and Luke Skywalker mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah.
I had to bring that one up, right? I love that one. Okay. Or Gandalf and Frodo, or Dumbledore and Harry Potter, or
whatever. Yeah.
Right. All of those, right?
Yeah.
I digress, but the point is that it's only for a time, and to limit that, right? So that you may become friends later on, and you may be friends forever, but there's a point of the wisdom is transferred, the knowledge is transferred, and then we have to move on to the next step, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think a red flag in that reality would also be when someone goes from being a mentor to being aggressive towards you, because you're at the shifting point where you've learned what you can from them, and it's time for you to move on. And there's this controlling aspect of like, let's keep you by being aggressive or angry towards you.
Right. Absolutely.
And so I think that would be something else to look out for.
Especially because they get sometimes mentors may find a prize mentee that they're really proud of, right? Mm-hmm. And then they want to hold on to them. Yeah. And that can be, not so good. So it is important it is a type of an initiation process. So letting go and having them, become their own man and their own person is really important, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a really good base we covered. Practical ways that you can find mentor roles are to be fulfilled in your life, but also things to look out for.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are all practical things for guys watching this, and women. I mean,
right.
It's not really that exclusive.
Right.
So yeah, I don't got anything else more that I would want to touch base. What, you got anything else running through your brain?
Well, no, I just think that, the whole idea is that in life we all are, hopefully we're better than we were yesterday. Mm-hmm. And tomorrow will be better than we were today. And, life is about mastery and overcoming, really mastering ourselves. So, I have there's a saying, he who conquers himself. Mm-hmm. And, the real truth in life is that if we have our impulses and we have our, self-sabotaging behaviors, and, we're kind of, undoing ourselves even when we're trying hard in life, and then we're not really mastering ourselves. So part of mentoring is really, really getting the knowledge and the wisdom so that we can mature on the inside again, and that we can actually overcome ourselves. We are our biggest, enemies at times, right? And with our self-limiting beliefs and behaviors, right? So self-mastery, I think this is the key for mentoring. For any guy, I just really encourage guys to do this work and really, really be willing to look inward and take the criticism, do the internal reflection, and really work on getting out of just this kind of fixed trance-like state that we always get ourselves into. You know,
Yeah.
I always say, does a goldfish know that it's in the bowl? Probably not. You know, so,
Yeah.
and it's probably a good thing it doesn't know it's in a bowl. But when you take it out to a swimming pool, let's say, and you release it, it's going to swim like this for a while until you tell it and show it that it can swim away and get, you know, in a bigger space. And I think that's what mentoring is all about, is helping individuals, you know, get out of this sort of bowl mentality, right? See the world as bigger and that they can expand, right? So
yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I think my last words on this subject would also be just really know your expectations too. Like, are your expectations unrealistic? Like, okay, you need to adjust them appropriately. So if you know your expectations, people probably aren't going to fail you, and you're probably not going to crash and burn as much. So yeah. Well, do you have any resources you wanna plug in here from your website?
Well, you mean the Atlanta? I think it's Atlanta counseling counseling therapy. Atlanta Men's Counseling Therapy.com. I have 6 websites right now, and I'm trying to consolidate them. It's like
so many.
I know. So there are some books on there. I would encourage guys to really. I mentioned this book over and over today, The King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. That's a great foundation. It might be a little bit of a difficult read, but it's not that hard. It's not a big, thick book. It's not a big textbook. It's really important to know these, you know, archetypes for ourselves so that we can build on those archetypes and have a better, healthier sense of self, right? So that's something I really push. Yeah.
I think another really good one too that just popped in my brain is actually At the Gates, or Fire at the Gates. It's the story of 300 made in a more, I think it's Fire at the Gates. Let me look it up.
Oh, you mean the movie 300?
Yeah, well, it's
like the
movie 300, like the story essentially of the 300.
Yes. Okay.
Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield. That's what it's called. It's actually a really interesting book, and I would recommend that as well, because it has this kind of king role of, and which would be what a mentor is looking for. You know, like you're looking for in a mentor. So
right.
That would be something I would recommend. But other than that, I'm Timothy Wenger from The Man Effect, and this is Daniel, Dr. Daniel David. And you already cited, can you cite your website one more time for us?
Right. Atlanta Men's Counseling Therapy.com.
Boom. And
all right.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this. I appreciate you so much. And
thank you so much for being
here. Your Man Effect still has a lot of effect on me. Okay. So I want to appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
And for everyone who's watching, feel free to comment, share, subscribe. You do you. If this is something interesting, just let me know. And if you want to get in touch with Daniel here, just let me know, or reach out to him on his website. All right.
Right. All right. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep. All right.